What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So with new cards constantly coming out and the meta constantly shifting as well, it can be a little bit difficult for those of you guys out there that are maybe free to play players or newer players to actually keep up with your collection. You know, dust is a really precious resource for you guys. So we definitely wanted to make a video to help those of you out there who are having a little bit of trouble deciding what to spend your dust on. And legendaries are definitely a big investment when it comes to it. It's 1600 dust, and crafting the wrong legendary can set you back weeks of progress if you're a budget player. So today we're talking about the best legendaries to craft in Hearthstone nowadays in the current meta. So if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and let's begin. First up, it's Fandral Staghelm. So despite the recent nerfs to Yogg-Saron, which kind of was a nerf to the Miracle Druid deck, Druid in general still definitely has a ton of powerful tools and is still one of the best classes in the game. Fandral is by far the most important legendary to have when playing a Druid deck. You know, he's got a ton of really powerful synergies with the most cards in the class. Raven Idol, Living Roots, Nourish, Wrath, tons of other cards get significantly better with Fandral Staghelm, and the more turns your Fandral survives, the more likely you're going to be to win the game. And while he doesn't necessarily belong quite as high on the list as some of our neutral legendaries, since of course he only gets played in one class, if you're going to be playing Druid, you definitely need a Fandral. Next up, we have Edwin Vancleef actually. It's a little bit unclear maybe how good Rogue will be after the meta settles down, but between Miracle Rogue and other variants, it's fairly unlikely that it will be a bad class in the meta, and Edwin is going to be a must-have for most Rogue decks, so definitely craft him if you guys are looking to play Rogue. You know, between free and cheap spells, it's really easy to make it just a massive Edwin, and of course after the BGH, the silence nerfs, he's just such a great card because it's so hard for so many classes to remove him. Edwin's a great tempo play against aggressive decks, a great threat against control decks, and just a solid minion against mid-range opponents. And he's never really bad in any matchup, and he's definitely one of Rogue's most powerful cards in general. Again, Edwin isn't a neutral card though, so he's probably not one of the first legendaries you should craft unless you're looking to play Rogue, but if you are, you're definitely going to need him. Up next, we have Grommash Hellscream. So the execute nerfs kind of hurt tempo-based warrior decks a fair amount, also had a small impact on control warrior as well, but it's very likely that a variety of warrior decks are still going to be very top tier. And Grom is by far one of the strongest legendaries in the game, and almost every warrior deck's going to want to play him for sure. I mean, he's got charge, he's got that immediate impact, he's got that burst combo, insane stats for an 8-mana legendary really, and his enrage ability of course lets you do those crazy combos to burst your opponent down for lethal, and Grom also kind of works as a decent removal spell as well if you just run him into something. You know, again, kind of with the other two legendaries we talked about, he is just for warrior, so if you're going to play warrior, craft a Grom. If you're not going to play warrior, you don't need him, but if you are planning on playing any warrior variant, Grom's definitely going to be one of the most important cards for you to craft. Next up, we're moving on to the neutral legendaries. So first up, we have Sylvanas Windrunner. So Sylvanas has been just a powerhouse card ever since the start of Hearthstone, and although the game has honestly vastly changed since then, she still remains as one of the most powerful, the most consistent, and the most outstanding legendaries in the entire game. Though she's not the end-all be-all win condition that maybe she once was, with Shaman and more aggressive decks being popular, running Hex and stuff like that, Sylvanas is still always going to be an insane value card. As well, some of the kind of pre-standard silence nerfs, you know, Ironbeak Owl and stuff like that, have also given her a nice boost in popularity. Sylvanas definitely belongs in every control deck, every N'Zoth deck, every mid-range deck. She's just a solid value card you can throw in pretty much everywhere. You know, there was even a time where people played a lot of Sylvanas in aggressive decks too. Unless you kind of plan on playing pretty much only aggro decks, Sylvanas is definitely going to be the card for you, and definitely one of the first neutral legendaries you should craft in Hearthstone. Up next, we're taking a look at something that's a little bit of a wild card, which is Bloodmage Talos. Talos is, you know, he's a great utility card. He provides both card draw, that's spell damage for 2 mana, and the only other really thing that gives you spell damage is Azure Drake, which also does actually see a lot of play. So in general, Bloodmage Talos is a great card to have, and he's a seriously awesome tool for a lot of niche choices. You know, Miracle decks, Freeze Mage decks, as well as a lot of Shaman decks and spell damage based decks. You know, a lot of people wait a really long long time to craft Thalnos actually, because he's not like the most flashy legendary, he's not a huge late game monster, but he is still one of the best legendaries in the game to craft, and he definitely fits into more meta decks than almost any other legendary nowadays in the meta. Now, although Bloodmage Talos might be one of the easier legendaries to replace with something like a Kobold Geomancer, and maybe some of the games it's not going to matter, but at the end of the day, that extra card draw is super important, and that spell damage enabler is a great thing to have as an awesome tool, especially when you don't have to commit the resources to it. Not to mention a bunch of death rattle synergies with cards like N'Zoth. Although Thalnos might not be the most flashy or the most powerful legendary, he's definitely still super incredible, and he's definitely very popular and a very frequent choice to use in a lot of meta decks, so he's probably one of the first neutral legendaries you should look to craft, unless you plan on playing only non-Thalnos decks like Control Warrior. I mean, definitely look at the decks that you want to play. This is kind of just like a general list for those who maybe don't know what they want to play. So with our final card on the list, it is of course Ragnaros the Firelord. And Ragnaros is an incredibly powerful option for really just any deck that wants any amount of late game potential. He can stay on the board for a really long time, deals damage outside of combat, and in general he just gets you a ton of value, fits into a ton of decks, and overall is just awesome. Ragnaros is also quite hard to kill as well. I mean, he's definitely one of the most efficient, really just best legendaries in the game, especially now that cards like Haunted Creeper, Muster for Battle aren't really floating around standard anymore. Ragnaros is a great card in every control deck really, and he fits into a lot of mid-range decks and even some aggro decks as kind of like a tech choice. He's definitely one of the most popular legendaries for newer players to craft, and rightfully so. I mean, he's a great win condition for people without access to other legendaries. He's a great option that will allow you to replace other potential win conditions as other legendaries that maybe you can't afford to craft. He also slots very easily into pretty much most, if not all, tier 1 and tier 2 decks, and is a great replacement for really just other late game, really just any late game threats in general that you might not have. Unless you plan on playing specifically decks that don't want Ragnaros, like maybe Freeze Mage, it's definitely the first legendary you should look to craft in Hearthstone. So what was the first legendary you guys crafted? Definitely let us know in the comments below, and looks like that's going to be it from me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.